Hey everybody, Scott from WhatCulture.com, and I thought just for the sake of doing something a little bit different, I'm gonna have a rant, because there's a certain type of progression system that is in a ton of modern games, and as soon as I start breaking it down, you'll realize exactly what I mean. Nearly everybody that I've brought this up to has then gone, yeah, it's bad, it sucks, and why do so many games keep doing this? Which is why I kind of thought, you know what, I'll just make some notes and I'll leap in and I'll just share it with you guys, and you can, we'll sort of parse out the pros and the cons and why it's in games and where it's gonna go from here, because there's quite a bit to talk about, even though the thing that I'm getting at doesn't really have a name necessarily. But again, you'll figure out what I mean as I get stuck into this. So basically what I want to tackle, what I want to pick apart, is that sort of percentage-based numericies way that a whole bunch of games kind of form their progression. It's everything from plus 3% to power to plus 2.5% gold acquisition or whatever. It tends to populate a lot of open world games. It's all over RPGs. It kind of ties in with loot grinds and games that have microtransactions. Basically, any game where they want you to play it for longer than just a few hours tends to fall back on this as the way to keep you coming back. Now, it's worth pointing out that I'm not talking about Monster Hunter World or like The Witcher 3. Those games offer steady rewards across ginormous playtimes. Instead, it's the incremental percentage-based progressions that routinely feel phoned in as hell. And why? Why do developers keep falling back on this stuff? Honestly, I kind of think that it's a response to the whole games as a service thing. I think we're still kind of figuring out what that even means, and a whole bunch of developers and publishers are also trying to think of ways to keep you coming back. If a game is now designed to last you, say, a year or a couple of years, then they need progression systems or ways to dole out rewards that match that. For the most part, games aren't designed with a couple of years worth of, new animations or new combat moves or new ways to play the game across such an expansive time. And instead, we're seeing the introduction or the reliance on mathematics to keep you going. Expand level caps, drag out the gameplay loop, and voila! You've now got a good few months or potentially a year or two of progression, something for people to tap back into. Although, as we'll inevitably conclude, or at least I hope you'll agree with me, it isn't satisfying at all. Even Fallout 76 is now falling victim to this sort of thing with its perk cards, as was shown in the pretty damn cringeworthy QuakeCon 2018 showcase. And to be honest, it was seeing the mighty Fallout name kinda also get dragged into this weird miasma of just pluses and negatives and percentages and incremental rewards that made me take a step back and realize just how many games are doing this thing now. There's Destiny, The Division, Agents of Mayhem, Need for Speed Payback, Assassin's Creed Origins, and Odyssey. Hell, Ubisoft are one of the biggest offenders for this thing, whether it be For Honor, The Crew, Ghost Recon, Watch Dogs 2. They've fallen back on this more than anyone else, but it is everywhere. Even Horizon Zero Dawn and God of War introduced loot grind statistics, though for the most part, the variance in armor and weapon upgrades was satisfying as opposed to exploitative. All of this brings me onto another reason, possibly the biggest reason, as to why this whole system of progression won't go away. It's way, way, way too profitable. Having a number crunching aspect to your game plays into the whole rolling the dice to get higher stats mentality, which is something that we've seen many publishers then put behind a paywall. Cough up the coins for another spin of the wheel. It's pretty much the old school arcade mentality where you had to just pay to have a go, resurrected. We've seen companies like Warner Brothers and EA flirt with this stuff to disastrous effect, but even if the monetizable aspects are reduced, giving us more full games, we're still left with numerically fueled progression from start to finish. And that sucks. I mean, just think about it. Think about the likes of Arkham Asylum, a game with a really demonstrable, definable progression. At the start of that game, yes, you were Batman, but by the end, you were taking on goons like huge crews of guys, 20 dudes in a row, with moves that you'd perfected across hours of game time. You demonstrably felt better at the end of the game than you did at the beginning. There's a worthwhile progression from beginning to end. Contrast to the likes of Destiny or Destiny 2, and by hour 300, you're still fundamentally playing in the exact same way that you were in like minute 3. It just so happens that that melee punch is now doing 200% more damage. But it's the exact same melee punch, and fundamentally, that just isn't that satisfying, worthwhile, recommendable, or anything in regards to having a tail on the game in the first place. Overall, I just kind of think that a lot of developers are struggling with ways to maintain engagement or entertainment across such massive time periods. I think it's okay for a game to just hold our attention for a good few hours and let that be it. Obviously, putting these sorts of systems into play does mean that a whole bunch more money is coming in, but overall, as we're seeing, and as you might agree or not, The games themselves aren't actually that much better for it, and it ends up feeling like the content itself and the progression is just dragged out. It's just stretched across this huge chasm that's supposed to, or used to, represent gameplay. Either way, let me know what you think down in the comments below. Is this the sort of thing that you've noticed, or is it just kind of satisfying and acceptable, and maybe you have some fun with it? I'm not saying that I necessarily don't, but I do feel like a whole bunch of these bigger AAA games just kind of peter out and start falling back on mathematics and numericies, you know, numbers, number crunching, all that kind of stuff, rather than something that's more designed or satisfying or worthwhile. Let me know what you think. I'm Scott from ArtCulture.com, and I'll catch you soon.